such a long time. It actually seems like forever since I last saw you, but I'm so glad that I get to see you again. Hopefully you were able to take the midterm with no problem. I haven't heard from any of you that you had a problem with that. I will be working on grading your midterms this week, so I should have them all graded by Friday. So you should be getting your grade by Friday. Also, I have caught up with all the presentations, all the papers, so everything has been graded. The only thing that has not been graded yet is your midterm, which I'm going to work on this week. So I can't believe we are already on week 9 of the semester. We're more than halfway through the semester already. We have about like 7-ish weeks left. Isn't that unbelievable? It is unbelievable. So anyways, today we are going to be talking about chapter 7. We're going to be talking about emotions. And this is a really interesting chapter because when we think about communications, we only think usually about words and just the way that we say things, but we don't think about how emotions play a role in the way we say things and why we say things. So I think this chapter is really interesting, and we are going to be discussing emotions today and the importance of that. Also, I wanted to remind you all not to forget to submit your reflection post number 7 by Friday at 11:59 p.m. and also to submit your 15-minute paper number 7 by Friday at 11:59 p.m. Those are the 2 assignments you have due for this week. And I know in a couple of weeks we have another major paper due. So I should have the guidelines posted sometime next week, if not at the end of this week. So I'll try to be quick about it, and I'll try to post everything ASAP so that you have plenty of time to think of topics for that paper. So let's get started. Let me share my slides with y'all. So hopefully everybody is having a good week. I cannot believe that it's like so, like the weather is so nice. So that is definitely a plus. Anyways, let me share the screen with you. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about emotional messages. And like I said, it's really important for us to talk about this because we often think as emotions as kind of like a natural thing. And it is a natural thing, but we hardly ever think about how it affects relationships. Yes, let's talk about that. All right, so let's get started. So the objectives for this week are, first, by the end of this week, we're going to define what is emotions. That is something that we're going to be doing today. We're going to define what emotions are. We're also going to be talking about emotional intelligence, and believe it or not, emotional intelligence has become a thing lately, right? There are courses to develop your emotional intelligence. There are like quizzes online that you can take to see how much emotional intelligence you have. So it's becoming a thing. So we're going to talk about that today. And we're also going to list the principles of emotions and emotional messages. On Thursday, we will be talking about things that get in the way of interpreting and sending emotions in the right way. So that's what we'll talk about on Thursday. Today, we're going to talk about these 3 things. So let's talk about emotions and emotional intelligence. So the definition of emotions are very strong feelings. So let's say happiness is a very like strong state of, like happiness, like what we attach to it, which is like smiling, giggling, some type of warmth, right? And that's what we can define as emotion, as a very strong feeling. There are many reasons why we have to consider emotions. My dogs are going insane, y'all. Okay, so one of the reasons why we express, give me a second. So one of the reasons why we have to consider emotions is because there are many reasons why we express emotions in our relationships. Actually, most of our relationships are based on emotions. So if you think about why you become friends with somebody else, usually there's some type of emotional connection, like maybe you like the same things and that produces happiness, or it gives you some type of comfort. I know that or different types of friends have like different types of emotions attached to them. So there are some friends that I became friends with them because they gave me this great sense of like comfort because they're older, they have more experience. Or there are some friends that I become friends with because they give me a sense of happiness, fun, joy. So our relationships are really based on the emotional connection. So one of the reasons why we express emotions can happen is because we want to vent. I know that at least in my case, if I am having a really bad day, the one thing that I want to do is I want to vent someone and I want to express my emotions about why I'm having a bad day. Also, we can express emotions to want attention from others. So, for example, let's say that you have feelings for a person and you want that person to pay attention to you. There are some ways that you might express your emotions towards that person to get their attention. So, there are many reasons why we express them. Again, like I said, these are just a couple of them of why we express emotions. Now, emotional intelligence is really important. Like I said, I actually I think it was like last year I went to Target, I think, and I found a lot of books on like how to understand emotions, emotional intelligence, like how can you become an emotional intelligent individual. Like apparently that's like the highest level of like success and intelligence. Like you'll be able to like basically solve all of your life problems if you have like high emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence refers to being able to differentiate between emotions that either affect your decisions or that don't affect your decisions, and it depends on a context. So for example, let's say that with the whole bridesmaid situation that I was telling you all about, let's say that my friend picked that dress, the dress is hideous, I hate it, but because of the context of the situation and the relationship that I have with that friend, like would it be normal for me to be like, start cursing her out, ripping off the dress and like throwing a tantrum? Probably not, because that's not the context for it, right? So like emotional intelligence allows you to kind of like decide which emotions to kind of like portray in a given context. So which ones are appropriate or not. So my example that I have here is, and I've seen this happen, like, so for example, let's say that you're at Starbucks, you ask for your coffee order and your barista, for some reason, they have a lot of people, they get the coffee order wrong. So like, would you be the type of person who throws your coffee at them? Or do you simply ask them to remake it? Like, which one would be the appropriate emotion? Like, people who lack emotional intelligence will probably be the people who would throw the coffee at the barista and be like, you don't know what you're doing, like, you're not doing anything right or whatever. The most of us who have like, a decent level of emotional intelligence will be like, hey, like, you please, remake it. Like, like I asked for almond milk. I'm allergic to dairy. Can you please like replace it? Like, that would be the right action to take based on the emotional intelligence for that particular context. So again, like I said, if I was like, I hate the bridesmaid dress that I'm wearing, obviously, right? But am I gonna like start cursing my friend out and like ripping the dress apart like at the fitting? No, like that's not emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence works in other aspects that are more complicated than that. So for example, if you think about people who are going through a divorce or a big breakup of a very strong relationship that they have, I love true crime shows. Okay. So I am obsessed with like crime podcasts and things like that. And one of the crime podcasts that I was listening to was this lady who found out that her husband was cheating, and she ran over him like I think like 10 times with her Mercedes Benz. Now, besides that lady being highly disturbed, she also lacked emotional intelligence because probably a person who has like emotional intelligence, like an average amount, instead of like running the Mercedes over their husband 7 to 10 times, you probably would be like, hey, like, why did you do this to me? Like, if this relationship is over, let's get a divorce, right? That's it. Thus, or you would like, start throwing things, you get a little bit angry, totally fine. But there are like, when you look at these crime shows, there are people who literally, so there's that lady who like her name is Clara Harris, and she ran her husband over with the Mercedes. There was another lady who literally set her entire husband's closet on fire, like in front of their front yard. like in their front yard. She literally dumped his entire closet, set it on fire. Even that is a little bit more acceptable than being angry that your husband is cheating on you by running over like him with the Mercedes. Oh, and not to mention that her stepdaughter or the man's daughter was in the car with her. So she saw like when this lady killed her dad. So as we can see, not only is the person disturbed, but it's not the appropriate emotion. So this is why emotional intelligence. Oh, wow. Somebody threw a pizza at you because you made it wrong, Karen. That's awful. That is awful. I'm telling you, I've seen people who get so angry at like the Starbucks baristas. There was this lady who went into Starbucks to complain because her coffee was too hot and it spilled on her dog. And I'm just like, put the lid on the coffee, put it in a place where your dog can't reach it, call it a day. That's not their fault. They tell you that the coffee is hot, but again, emotional intelligence is important. So they keep saying that, again, this is like one of those big, like, I don't want to say trendy because it's a thing. We all should have some type of emotional intelligence, but it's becoming kind of like a trendy thing. Anyhow, moving on, let's talk about the principles of emotions and emotional messages. So the first principle talks about how emotions occur in stages. So as we talked about other types of, like kind of like listening and all other different types of concepts in interpersonal communication, they tend to happen in stages. And there are different theories that kind of talk about different stages and how emotions happen between those stages. So the first theory is called the James Lange theory. And this basically says that you experience the events, you have some type of like bodily reaction to it, and then you experience emotions. So for example, let's say I'm at a party, I'm heterosexual. So like if a cute man approaches me, hands me a rose, that's the event. My physiological reaction will definitely be to blush at the very beginning. And then the emotions that I would feel, I would be like, I would feel some type of like, shyness, kind of like embarrassment, but at the same time excitement, right? So that's the emotion. So the event happens first, then I do my physiological experience of the blushing, and then I say, oh, I'm experiencing this emotion. This is what's going on. Next thing, the next theory says, the cognitive labeling theory says a little bit different. It says that you first, again, going again with the example that I said, this really good looking man, he hands me a rose. I start blushing, and I turn my gaze away. Then I interpret it. Oh, this blushing and this putting like my gaze away means that I'm feeling a little bit shy. And then I say, oh, I'm experiencing shyness. So the cognitive labeling theory has an extra step than the James Lange theory. The cognitive labeling theory says that first you identify, you interpret the event, and then you identify the emotion. So you add that extra step of saying, oh, what does it mean that I am blushing and I am like avoiding this person's gaze? Oh, it means that I am shy, embarrassed. I don't know, whatever it is. Yes, Karen.
So kind of, kind of one of them is like thinking before speaking, and then the other one is like speaking before thinking.
Kind of, yeah. So I think that you are onto something because I believe the cognitive labeling theory wants you to think about the emotion first before saying that that's what you're experiencing, which is, I think, what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but there are kind of like conflicting views about these theories. I think it's really interesting because if you kind of like sat down and start thinking about an emotion that you're experiencing, I don't know if you would really say that you interpret it before you actually feel it. There are people that say like, I don't think that extra step is there. Maybe that extra step is there. I don't know. It kind of goes back and forth depending on the scholar that you talk to. But I think it's really interesting because we might be interpreting the emotion or the event in a split second. So our body works really, really fast. So our body and brain works really fast. So I'm not sure if we could do the whole, 4-step process that the cognitive labeling says in like a split second. I'm not sure, but those are two schools of thought. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is that emotions are primary and blended. So I have the diagram over here, and there are certain emotions that are kind of like universal or primary emotions, which are right here. So we have disgust, anger, anticipation, joy, trust, fear, surprise, and sadness. So those are what we consider kind of like the universal emotions. If anyone were to look at it, they would look at it and say, oh, those are the emotions. I am so sorry, I have no idea what happened. So if anybody were to look at those emotions, they would be able to interpret it like that. And they will be able to say, oh, this emotion is disgust. Did you know, oh God, my dogs are acting crazy. Did you know that there actually was a test a long time ago when scholars, hey, stop. Sorry. Did you know there was actually a test a long time ago where scholars would show people faces, right? And they would ask people to interpret what the emotions were. And that's how they came up with these like primary emotions. They were saying everybody was able to identify all of these emotions pretty well. So the emotions are, again, disgust, anger, anticipation, joy, trust, fear, surprise, and sadness. So these are the ones that are kind of like in the middle ring. Those are the main emotions. And yes, I will gladly go to the previous slide after. So these are the same emotions. And again, like in that study that I was telling you all about, they were able to interpret these emotions universally. So these are what the primary emotions are. The rest of the emotions are kind of like a combination of all of these. So for example, if you look at, let's say, if you look at, I'm trying to look at this. So there's like a combination of these emotions will give you something. So for example, you know, like, I think it was like happiness and joy. It was like a combination of this will give you love, like joy and trust will give you love. And like, you know, a combination of these emotions will give you kind of like the secondary emotions. So again, the main emotions are right here. They're like the darkest part of the ring. And then the rest of the emotions are kind of like a combination of all of them. And I know that this diagram is like pretty hard to like read because it's really weird, but it's really hard to read, but yeah. Anyways, I know that Samuel wanted me to go back to the previous slide. So this is the previous slide, but again, there are a lot of diagrams online that can actually like explain to you like the combination of emotions, but there are just like basically 6 major emotions, and a combination of all of them is what gives you like the secondary emotions. So although we have those like main emotions that pretty much everybody can identify, if we combine a couple of them, it gives us the secondary emotions. So that's really, really interesting because, you know, I was looking at all of that stuff and like, I was seeing that a combination of joy and trust gives you love. And it's really interesting because I was thinking like, that's very, very interesting. I didn't know that the combination of joy and trust will give you love. And like, if you look at the rest of them, so fear and surprise, it gives you, I think it's like, is it awe? And like, sadness and surprise is disapproval. So like all those combinations give you those secondary emotions. So again, this diagram is not that beautiful, but the textbook has an amazing diagram that kind of like, it's similar to this, but it's much more clear. So remember that emotions are both primary or blended. So we can combine our primary emotions to create our secondary emotions. Moving on. Emotions involve both body and mind, which means that we not only experience our emotions in our head, but we also experience them physically, like I was saying. So if you're feeling embarrassed, like you blush, you tend to avoid gaze, you know, and then you feel embarrassed, or like you feel embarrassed. That's usually like the physical bodily characteristics that are attached to feeling embarrassed. How about anxiety? If you are anxious, what are some of the physical characteristics or body characteristics that you could experience if you are anxious? What are some of the? Go ahead.
It's like a lot of fidgeting, a lot of worry, a lot of like, you know, just like trying to like see, like, yeah, just like a lot of like eye moving and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So like one of the things that you notice when somebody's anxious, like the fidgeting, like playing around with like their fingers or like with their hair. We also have like sometimes like your palms start to get sweaty if you're anxious, heart racing, shortness of breath that usually tends to and like Dania is saying, yeah, faster heart rate, sweating, all of that is a characteristic of anxiety. So this is a great example that shows that we can both experience these characteristics, both body and mind. The next principle of emotional messages or emotions is that you can express your emotions in multiple channels. You can do it both verbally and non-verbally. So if you are like, you know, really happy, you would say, you know, I am happy, or like I'm excited, or whatever emotion you're feeling, but you also would express it non-verbally. So for example, if somebody is scared or afraid of something, how would they express that fear non-verbally?
They would try to like shy away or back off from it.
Yeah, so like think about like going to a haunted house or to like Halloween horror nights, like when you have like those like scare, like, you know, actors like jump out of nowhere, like
Doesn't
you would
matter.
like shake, you know, hide,
It doesn't matter.
and jumping away and all that stuff. Yes, Patricia, what were you gonna say?
Some people react by running away.
Yes, so
It's so heavy, the impression that they just kind of freeze and snap and just run away.
I've seen that. I think that I don't know where I went. I think it was like a scary film or something, and I don't know, they were doing like a preview, and I saw like people run away, and I'm just like, yeah. I like how Ryan said that shaking is definitely one of my reactions when I am afraid of something. I start shaking, I try to cover my eyes, and like Karen was saying, like you try to kind of like shy away. So that's one of them.
Wait, were you talking about it was like a preview for Paranormal Activity and like people were running away from the movie?
Yeah, I think so. It wasn't that, but I was also like, I don't know, I went to see another movie. I don't know what movie I went to see. It was when I was in college, and I went with one of my friends, and one of the films that we went to see was like a scary film preview. I don't know, we got tickets through like the student association or whatnot. And I don't know, like people were running away because I just love Halloween and like scary movies and all of that. And it was really funny because that yeah, it was really interesting. It was really interesting to see that. It was really interesting to see that. I don't know, but I also like, I wonder how this whole situation is going to work with COVID, because I know that Halloween Horror Nights are open right now. So I don't know how the whole scare actor situation is going to work out with COVID. If any of you find out, let me know, because I would love to see how like this whole like emotional expression and, you know, the scare actors, like that whole interaction, like how it would work out. So if anybody finds out or ends up going, let me know, because I am extremely curious. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is how emotional expression are governed by display rules. So basically we have rules as to how to display certain emotions. So I don't know about you, but if I were to go to a party and they served a meal that it's not particularly my cup of tea, I'm not going to be like, ew, this is disgusting, and make like, you know, do like the whole gagging situation, right? Probably not, because, you know, in the rules that we have, that is not appropriate, right? Going to like somebody's party and being like, this is disgusting, making gagging sound and all that stuff, right? Not cool. So we do have rules as to what our emotions are okay to be expressed in certain contexts. So question, how do you react in a funeral, or what is expected of people to, how are people expected to react in a funeral?
Honestly, it depends who died. If it's someone close to you, obviously you're gonna react in like a more like tragic way. But if it's someone that like wasn't close to you, then obviously you're just gonna like, you know, refrain from like, you know, being like silly and goofy. It's just like, keeping like a more civil attitude.
I love that you brought that up because there are, it's funny because we see that some people, depending on the particular event or the person, they tend to react differently to grief than others. So like you were saying, if you were like really close to that person, if you're really close to that person, like how maybe your relationship was like silliness and like you guys had like an awkward like way of expressing like sadness and things, and you might laugh or you might giggle or you might, it depending on the relationship, like you said. Patricia?
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit difficult to go to funerals, especially when I've been close to the person. And it is because, when you go and sometimes you listen to all the great things the person did, it's that for God's sake, you knew this person was a prick. Get real. I can understand now you wanted to say some nice things, but some people like they just overdo it, and for those that are really close to the person and you, that person is like, it's so annoying. For example, I met my biological father like 3 times in my life. I went to San Francisco when he was dead, and my half brothers from his side invited me, and I heard his stepdaughter saying what a wonderful man he was. She loved her kids. He was such a good father to him, and I just want to smack the crap out of her. Tell her, shut up. He was my father. He never did crap for me. And hearing all these amazing things that he was doing, it was just like upsetting. And I noticed that in other funerals that I've seen. I don't mind the crying. I don't mind the guilt trip they have sometimes because, sometimes we're not kind to people and accidents do happen, people die, and that reaction, I could deal with that. But what I just, to me, is too much is the fact that they just always say the wonderful things. They never say, yeah, this person had a difficult way of dealing with people or with feelings, but we love them no matter what, we love
That's
them
so
if we accept
funny.
them.
I love that, Patricia, because I teach in my advanced public speaking class, I teach about special occasion speeches. And one of the things that we talk about is like, what do you do when the person wasn't really a great person in life? Like, how do you make this speech realistic, yet at the same time, kind of like respect the family and the integrity of the person because they're already dead, right? So, like, how do you go about that? And I just like tell students to kind of like just do like a very like general kind of like, this person was a father, just be very general about it and kind of like not embellish it, kind of like how you were explaining that this person was kind of like going over the top, embellishing the person's life. I just tell them to stay to like the general idea, just give like, some comfort to the family, focus on them, give them a general like description of the person and call it a day. Karen, what were you going to say?
Kind of tying into what you guys were saying. I mean, as dark as it sounds,
I found this on the web for
sorry. Kind of tying into what you guys were saying. Some people, as dark as it sounds, some people may find relief in that person dying. So, like, people will be like, "Oh, he died. Thank God."
You know what? That wouldn't be like the first time. Like I know that I have been to a couple of funerals, and I don't really like funerals because I get freaked out by the when people do open caskets. I don't do well with that stuff. So I don't really I try not to go to funerals. But when I do go to funerals, it's really interesting to see because like there are some people that would just be kind of like super like emotional because of like they care so much about the person. There will be people that are just like there to kind of like just comfort and they are awkward about it. So I don't know, like you two are bringing up some good points, but again, like there are some people, I've seen cases where people like are laughing about they're laughing in a funeral because the sadness is just too much that they don't want to cry anymore, they don't know how to express it, so they just laugh or giggle or something like that.
It's like, for example, and like I apologize to like the Trump supporters on here, but like if Trump dies, I'll feel like a sense of relief.
I don't know, like I think that based on like what a lot of people have been saying, maybe a lot of people would, but I don't know, like I just like it's just interesting. Like one of the examples that you brought that up is like when Fidel Castro died, there were people who were having like parties and parades, and like other people were like, yo, like a person died.
I was literally thinking about that too right now. I was like, when the Cubans like felt relief when Castro died, like, yeah.
And it's so interesting because I'm like, I can see both sides of it. So I don't think any of them are wrong to do what they're doing. It's just like emotions are emotions, and like every single one of us has expresses our emotions in a different way, and we feel about people in different ways. So like kind of like what Patricia was saying, like this you're like you know, your stepsister was like saying all these like things, right? And you're like, no, that's not what happened in my life. So again, we do have like we do have these rules that sometimes don't really apply. Also, another thing that I find really interesting is that there are apparently like rules as to how you should act on a first date, which it was something that I didn't like really know, because my husband and I have been like we're best friends for like 10 plus years before we started dating, and like there really wasn't like there wasn't any awkwardness, but apparently there are rules for the first date. Karen, you have your hand up?
I had my hand up, but that was for the last thing of the funerals.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember when my grandma's husband died. He wasn't my grandpa. And when he died, I hated his guts. He was mean, nasty. Ugh. And I remember everybody, I'm Spanish and I was Catholic, and they would raise the rosary and pray for him to go to heaven. I will be on my knees saying, let him go straight to hell and burn in hell. And you know, I was only like about 19 years old. And I
I
could
didn't
still
mean to
remember
laugh. I'm
that.
just sorry. It's
No, no.
you're just
And,
very expressive.
and even now, I still don't feel guilty for wanting that for him, because he was the type of man who liked to touch the girls. And I remember
Okay.
how he was so touchy with me. I was like, ooh, prick. And that's why he died. I was so happy. I was very exciting. I remember everybody in the room, you know, having the open casket and
Oh
praying for
God.
him, and me go outside and dance and saying, yes. Sí, decía yo. I was saying in Spanish because I was speaking Spanish there. And I was so excited, like, yes, having my yes dance and wishing it would go straight to hell
You
for
know, it's
all
so
the
funny
people.
because I have been to funerals, like you know, funerals in Spanish, and I can like totally like see the whole like rosary, and I can picture that in my mind.
Mhm.
Wow. But yes, like I said, you know, there are like certain rules. Like I was talking to a couple of my girlfriends who are dating, or they're using dating apps. And they were telling me like, oh, like on a first date, like, you know, there are like some rules that you can't like let them know that you're too into them, or like you can't like be too forward with them. And I said like there are display rules in first dates, like mostly when you meet people through apps. I did not know that. Next, emotions have consequences, meaning emotions affect our relationships. What is that? What is that? Okay, emotions do have consequences. So on depending on the emotion and depending on the person that you are expressing with your depending the person you're expressing your emotions to, they can affect relationships. So for example, let's say that you are you like someone and you have been seeing that person for a while, and so like let's say that you are dating a person and you really start feeling, you know, way too much like emotions for them. There is like usually like a time where like you waited out until like you have been seeing each other for a while before you let the person like use the, like, you know, the L word, you tell them you love them, right? So if you express your emotions too soon, they might have consequences of the relationship. If you don't express them at all, there's also emotions. I've heard of like um I heard like I had a girlfriend of mine who like was dating this guy for a while, and the guy like never like made it seem to her that they were serious. And after 10 years of being together, like she just broke up with him because she didn't know if he felt really seriously for her the way that she felt for him. And again, the lack of expressing emotions or expressing two emotions too quickly might have an effect on a relationship. And last thing, emotions can be both adaptive and maladapted. Emotions can either adjust well to situations or they do not. So like let's say that I am seeing this person and I see the guy that I'm seeing having a coffee with another female at a Starbucks, and I'm walking by and I see them, I could either be like, oh, okay, like I'll ask him later. I'll figure out what's later. Or I could be there and be like, what are you doing? Are you cheating on me? And I can create a scene. So it can work well with a situation, or it doesn't. So again, kind of like going back to the theme of the emotional intelligence, right? Does it work well for that situation or doesn't? And the last thing is that emotions are contagious. Emotions can be passed from one person to the other. So one of the things I do teach public speaking, and one of the things that I tell my students are like, one of the easiest ways to kind of create a comfortable environment to deliver your speech in is just smile. Smile when you're delivering your speech. If you smile, the other person is likely to smile back at you, because emotions are contagious. Now, I don't know about you, but when you get kind of like in a funky or sad mood, I start playing like really sad music, like Adele, and all that stuff. So I start playing really sad music, and people who are around me and are listening to that music and they're kind of like feeling my vibe start feeling sad. Actually, I did that last week. I wasn't feeling particularly sad. I was just having like a blah day, and I started playing Adele, and like her new single came out and all of that. And my daughter was like, Mommy, this music is like so boring. This music is like for sleeping. And I'm just like, I mean, obviously she's 4.5. She can't really tell me what she's feeling, but from what she told me, I kind of like think, oh, like she probably thinks this music is like a sad type of music. Like, so she's starting to pick up on that. So again, emotions are contagious. If you are with somebody who is constantly pessimistic, you're probably going to eventually pick up on that. And it's going to start getting to you eventually. So I know that I have ended a lot of friendships with people who are constantly sad or pessimistic, just because I start picking up on that emotion after spending so much time with them, and it's negative. Anyways, do we have any questions before I let you go for today?
Professor, would you mind sending me the Thursday lecture?
The Thursday lecture?
Yeah, the upcoming Thursday lecture.
Oh.
After class.
Absolutely. Let me write that down, Karen, so I do not forget.
I'm sorry, Karen. What is that about?
Oh, no. I was just asking Professor if she could send me the upcoming lecture, because I won't be in class on Thursday.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I will send it to you. If I don't send it to you by the evening of Thursday, shoot me an email.
No, take your time. So, yeah.
All right, everybody, you are free to go for today. Do not forget to submit your reflection post number 7 and your 15-minute paper number 7. Again, like I said, I will be catching up on all the midterm grading, and all of your midterms will be graded on Friday. So I will be all caught up with grading by Friday. With that being said, you're free to go for today. Have a good day. Stay warm because the weather is nice and cold.
Have a good week,
Thank
Professor.
you very much.
Bye.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.